Hello, my name is Thomas, and I'm 55 years old. Surviving 9/11 was nothing compared to what I discovered when I died 23 years later. Jesus pulled back the curtain and showed me America's next catastrophe, and the date will horrify you. This wasn't some dream or hallucination. This was God Himself warning me about what's already set in motion. What I'm about to reveal could save thousands of lives, but only if people listen now. For a long time, life hasn't felt like living. You might know what it's like to wake up every day feeling like you have a heavy burden on your shoulders. That weight began for me on September 11th, 2001. I was a finance manager at the time and worked on the 47th floor of the South Tower. I remember standing by the window with my coffee cup in hand and watching smoke rise into the sky when the first plane hit the North Tower. Linda, who always brought donuts to work on Fridays, grabbed my arm and said, "We have to go, Tom." Linda, a few other people, and I ran to the stairs. There was a lot of dust in the air. Alarms were going off and people were pushing each other. I got out. Linda didn't. I worked with 22 other people who also didn't. I knew them by their laughs, bad ties, and stories about their kids. When I try to sleep, I see their faces every night. Why me? Why did I get to leave when they didn't? That question has been a knife in my gut for 24 years. I used to be a person. I had a corner office, a good salary, and a family that thought I had everything together. But I fell apart after 9/11. Sarah, my wife, tried to keep me together, but I felt like a ghost in my own home. Sarah would beg me to talk while I sat at the dinner table and stared at my plate. "Just tell me what's wrong, Tom," she'd say, her voice breaking. I couldn't. The nightmares were too real. Flames, screams, and the sound of steel falling. Sarah left 12 years ago, and she took our daughter Emma with her. Emma was only 12 years old at the time. She was a smart kid with a laugh that could light up a room. But it hurt her to grow up with a dad who was checked out and lost in his own head. Now that she's 24 and fighting addiction, I know I'm part of why she's having a hard time. I tried to call her last month and left a message saying I was sorry, but she never called back. I don't hold her responsible. My sister Patricia used to check on me, but she stopped doing that too. Last time we talked, which was probably 2 years ago, she said, "You're stuck in the past, Tom. You need to let it go." She can say that easily. She didn't hear the screams or see the ash falling like snow. I wanted to let it go, but it felt like the past had a hold on me. You know that feeling when you think no one sees you and you're screaming inside but no one hears? That's how my life has been. A few years after 9/11, I lost my job at a big company. I couldn't concentrate and my heart raced during meetings. I now work part-time at a hardware store in Hoboken, where I sell paint cans and screws to people who are fixing up their homes. It's not very exciting work, but it pays for my one-bedroom apartment. It's not anything special. I sleep on a bed, watch TV, and sit on the balcony most nights. I stand there with a glass of whiskey in my hand and look at the Manhattan skyline. The new towers shine, made of glass and steel, but all I can see are the ones that fell. The guilt and memories are always there, like a pulse I can't turn off. I drink too much. I know it. At least for a little while, whiskey helps me forget the noise in my head. My doctor has me taking pills for PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Sarah used to say that I shake when I walk. I was raised Catholic and prayed every Sunday, but after 9/11, God seemed like a stranger. From my balcony, I would look up at the sky and think, if you're there, why did you let this happen? Why did you save me and not them? I stopped praying and believing in a lot of things. You might have felt that way too, that pain of not knowing if anyone is really listening. I was on my couch that Wednesday, September 11th, 2024, with a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the coffee table. There was a news report on the TV about airline safety. People were arguing about terrorist threats, new rules, and lessons learned from 9/11. I got angry, like I always do when people talk about that day like it was just a story. "You don't understand," I yelled at the screen. "People forgot. They forgot how much it cost us. My head hurt and my chest felt tight. Then it hit. A headache so bad it felt like someone was driving a nail through my head. My left arm went numb and my knees gave way. I tried to grab my phone, but it slipped out of my hand. The room turned around and everything went dark. I didn't know it at the time, but I was having a huge stroke. My brain was bleeding from years of stress, pills, and alcohol. 6 hours later, Mrs. Carter, my neighbor, found me lying on the floor with my door still open from when I went to get the mail. The EMTs told me I was clinically dead for 12 minutes. But it wasn't just a blackout that happened in those 12 minutes. It was a trip, a revelation, and I'm still trying to figure it out. Jesus told me about America and a tragedy that will happen if we don't change. I'm not a preacher or a hero. I'm just a broken man who got a second chance. I have to tell this story because everyone needs to hear it. What follows changed everything I thought I knew about my life, God, and why I'm still here. I can't put into words what happened after I fell to the floor of my Hoboken apartment that Thursday afternoon. I was yelling at the TV 1 second and the next my head hurt so much that my arm went numb as I reached for my phone. Then, everything came to a halt. It was like someone turned off the lights in the world. They told me later that I was clinically dead for 12 minutes. But those 12 minutes weren't a waste of time. They were all that mattered. I crossed over, and what I saw and felt is still hard for me to understand. Let me take you there because this isn't just my story. It's a glimpse of something bigger. It felt like a hammer hit my head when the pain started. I remember thinking, this is it, I'm done. My heart was racing and my chest was so tight that I could hardly breathe. I was scared, really scared. You know the feeling when you think you might not make it? I thought about my daughter Emma and how I'd never told her enough that I loved her. I thought about Sarah, my ex-wife, and all the times I pushed her away. I thought about the 23 co-workers from the South Tower. Their faces flashed in my mind like a slideshow. I didn't want to die like this, alone on a dirty rug with a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the table. But then, something changed as I fell. The fear didn't just go away. It was replaced by this warmth and quiet that felt like sinking into a soft bed after a long day. I was no longer afraid. I was free. I couldn't feel my body anymore. I felt like I was floating above myself, with no weight. I could see my apartment, but it looked different, small and almost fake. I was lying on the floor, my phone a few inches away, and the TV was still talking about how safe airlines are. The bottle of whiskey had fallen over, and a dark stain was spreading across the floor. Seeing myself like that was strange. I wasn't sad or scared. I was just curious, like I was watching someone else's life. You might know what it's like to step outside of yourself for a moment and look at your life from a distance, wondering how it got so hard. It felt like that, but 1,000 times clearer. After that, I was no longer in my apartment. It was hard to put into words, but it felt like something warm and welcoming was gently pulling me up, not by force. The world below me got smaller. Hoboken, the Manhattan skyline, and all the problems in my life shrank until they were just a dot. I wasn't moving through air or space. It was more like gliding through soft, golden light, like sunlight on a summer morning. At first, there was no sound, just this deep, perfect silence. I could feel my heart, or what was left of it, slowing down. It wasn't a bad thing. It was like it was finally getting a break after years of running. I could smell something, too. Something faint but familiar, like the pine trees from when I went camping with my dad as a kid. It was so real and so clear that it made me want to cry. I don't know how long I was in that light, but then I was in a different place. It was like stepping onto a huge observation deck that seemed to go on forever but was somehow cozy, like a place you had always known but never seen. The walls, or maybe they weren't walls, were made of crystals that sparkled with colors I can't even name. They showed the whole earth below, and I could see every detail. Airplanes left trails of light in the sky that linked cities like threads in a huge web. America was below me, with its coasts glowing and its heartland pulsing with life. I wasn't scared or worried here. I just felt at peace, like I had finally come home after being lost for so long. You know that feeling when you know you're safe, really safe, and nothing can hurt you? It was just like that, but a million times deeper. Then I could feel him. At first, I didn't see him, but I knew someone was there, like when you feel a loved one walk into a room before you turn around. I turned around and saw Jesus. He was normal, but not. He looked like a man in his 30s with dark hair and a simple white robe that seemed to glow from within, as if it were made of light. His hands were rough and had scars on them. And his eyes. Oh, those eyes. They held me and looked at every part of me, both the good and the bad. They were full of love and compassion, but also a kind of sadness that wasn't heavy but urgent, like he cared about something more than just me. His voice was soft, like a father talking to a scared child, but it had the weight of forever. He said, "Thomas, my dear son, it wasn't by chance that you lived. You never had to carry the guilt that you did." I gave in. I fell apart right in front of him. All the guilt. The nights spent staring at the skyline, the fights with Sarah, the quiet times with Emma, the whiskey, and the pills all came out at once. I was crying, not just tears, but a deep, gut-wrenching release. It felt like all the pain I'd ever felt was being washed away. I didn't have to hide or explain myself. For the first time in my life, I felt like someone really saw me and loved me anyway. You might know what it's like to feel like you don't deserve love, like you're too broken for it. I didn't feel that when I was standing there with Jesus. I felt like I belonged, scars and all, like I was enough. He reached out and put his scarred hand on my shoulder. It felt like being wrapped in warmth, like the hug I needed since 9/11. "Thomas," he said, his voice so kind it hurt, "you've carried so much. But I need you to look at something now. I want you to know why you're here." I wasn't scared anymore when I looked into his eyes, not of him or what he would show me. I felt safe, like a kid in their dad's lap who knew nothing could go wrong. There was an urgency in his voice, though, a call to pay attention and listen. It wasn't just about me, what he was going to show me. It was about America, a tragedy that was coming, and a chance to change things. I didn't know what it meant yet, but I was ready to listen and see what he wanted me to see. I stood there on that heavenly observation deck, feeling the warmth of Jesus' presence and his scarred hand still on my shoulder. The crystal walls sparkled around us, showing the earth below. Airplanes left trails of light across America, and cities pulsed like hearts. I felt safe in a way I hadn't been since before the towers fell when he held my eyes. I could have stayed there forever. He said, "Thomas," in a soft but steady voice like a father who knows you're in pain. "You've carried so much for so long. But I need you to see something bigger now. A truth about you, America, and why you're still here." I didn't want to take my eyes off of him. Those eyes saw everything about me. The guilt from 9/11, the nights I drank to forget, and how I let Sarah and Emma down. You might know what it's like to think that your mistakes make you who you are and that you aren't worth saving. But Jesus looked at me like I was his son, and my brokenness didn't change how much he loved me. "Why did you live that day?" he asked, pointing to the earth below, where the Manhattan skyline shone. "You think it was luck, but it was mercy. Thomas, I didn't save you so you could feel guilty. I saved you for a reason." He waved his hand and the walls made of crystal moved. I was suddenly watching myself run down the stairs of the South Tower on September 11th, 2001, with smoke choking my lungs and Linda's voice screaming, "Go, Tom, go!" I saw myself stumble out onto the street, with ash falling like snow and the towers burning behind me. My chest got tight, and the old guilt came up like bile. "I should have gone back," I said, my voice breaking. "I should have helped them, Linda, Mike, and everyone else." Jesus shook his head, and his eyes were so kind that it hurt. "You couldn't save them, Thomas. They had their time, just like you did. You shouldn't have to carry the guilt you feel. Let it go." His words hit me like a wave, and they washed away the weight I had been carrying for 24 years. I began to cry, but not the gut-wrenching sobs I'd been having before. These were quiet tears, as if a knot inside me was finally coming undone. He got closer, and his robe brushed the floor. It glowed like it was made of sunlight. "You've been alone, haven't you?" he asked. "Like no one can see you, not Sarah, not Emma, not even me." I nodded, but my throat was too tight to say anything. I remembered the nights I spent on my balcony, staring at the skyline, drinking whiskey that burned my throat, and wondering if God had forgotten me. "I never left you," he said, and his voice was so soft that it felt like a hug. "Even in your darkest times, I was there. I was there when you sat in your apartment, when you pushed Sarah away, and when Emma stopped answering your calls. I saw every tear, every doubt, and every time you thought about giving up." I fell again, my knees giving way, but he caught me with warm, steady hands. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a failure. I felt like a man who had always been loved. Then his face got serious, and his eyes flashed with that holy urgency I had felt before. "Thomas, your pain isn't only yours. It's a piece of a bigger puzzle, America's sick soul." The walls changed again to show planes flying across the country, with passengers laughing, working, and sleeping, not knowing they were in danger. Then the camera zoomed in on a commercial flight taking off into the sky. I could see the cockpit and the crew doing their checks, but something was wrong. Equipment was failing, and warning lights were being ignored. People weren't terrorists, they were careless, cutting corners to make money and putting safety at risk to get things done faster. The plane shook and then fell. I saw people on the plane grabbing their phones, calling their loved ones, and crying out to God. Families were at the airport and their faces fell when they heard the news. The pain was so fresh that it felt like 9/11 all over again. Jesus said, "This is coming." And his voice was full of sadness. "Not because I want to, but because my people have forgotten me." After September 11th, they filled churches for a while, prayed, and held each other close. But then they went back to their old ways, chasing money, ignoring the truth, and building towers but not souls. The walls showed more, churches that cared more about music and lights than about repenting, leaders who put money ahead of doing the right thing, and people who thought this life was all there was. He said, "America is blind to its own pride. They've put their faith in themselves, not me, and that's what caused this tragedy." I shook my head and my voice shook. Why, God? Why let this happen? He looked at me with eyes that were both fierce and kind. "I don't hurt people, Thomas, but I let it happen when hearts get cold. Tragedies are wake-up calls for my people to come back to me. I love them too much to let them sleep through their own deaths." He showed me scenes of hope, like people praying, families getting back together, and communities rebuilding after 9/11. He said, "My love never stops." I keep giving people chances to get past the darkness, the greed, the carelessness, and the pride. I want America to wake up before this plane crashes, to choose humility, and to really seek me. It felt like his words were rewriting something inside of me. I thought about my own life and how guilt and anger had made me blind and pushed away the people I loved the most. "What about me?" I asked in a small voice. "I've done so many things wrong. I hurt Emma, Sarah, and my sister. What good am I?" When Jesus smiled, it was like the sun coming out from behind the clouds. "Thomas, you are not your mistakes. You're mine. I've been with you through every failure, and I'm still with you now. You are ready to share this message because of your pain." He pointed to the earth and the streams of light that linked cities. "America's children, those who can't see my love and are suffering from pride and neglect, need to hear this. You will tell them that this disaster can be stopped. Prayer, repentance, and accountability. It's not too late." I felt my heart change, like a door that was locked swinging open. The guilt, shame, and years of feeling like I was worthless were all going away. I wasn't just a survivor anymore. I had a reason to live. But then I felt a pang. I didn't want to leave this place, this love, this peace that felt like home. "Lord," I said, my voice shaking, "can I stay here?" "With you? I don't want to go back to that apartment and feel that pain again." His eyes got softer, but they were still firm. "Thomas, you still have work to do. My kids are hurt and don't see the danger coming. They need to hear your voice and your story. Tell them I love them and that I'll call them back before it's too late." He squeezed my shoulder, and his touch made me feel better. "You won't go by yourself. I'll be with you every step of the way." I wanted to fight and beg to stay in that golden light, but his words were too strong for me to ignore. I thought of Emma and how she looked when she was a little girl, before my darkness drove her away. I thought about the families who would lose loved ones if that plane went down. You might know what it's like to be torn between wanting to stay somewhere safe and knowing you need to be somewhere else. "Okay," I said quietly, my eyes full of tears. "I'll go. I'll let them know." Jesus nodded, and his face was full of love. "You're all set, Thomas. Show them my heart." The observation deck started to fade, and the crystal walls became softer. But his voice stayed with me, clear and strong, as I felt myself being pulled back to the world I had left behind. I didn't want to leave that heavenly observation deck, where Jesus' love wrapped around me like a blanket, and the guilt of 24 years finally lifted. "Tell them I love them, Thomas." His voice, which was both soft and strong, kept ringing in my head. "Tell them that there is still time." But then I felt it. A pull, like a tide pulling me back. The golden light faded, the walls of the room became blurry, and all of a sudden I was in a hospital bed at Jersey City Medical Center, gasping for air and feeling like my chest was on fire. My body hurt like it had been hit by a truck, and machines beeped and tubes snaked into my arms. Doctors said it was a miracle that I was back alive after 4 days in a coma. They said my brain should have been mush after a stroke like that. But all I could think about was what Jesus said and the vision of that plane, the one that could still be stopped. It was a shock to come back. My body hurt. My throat hurt from the ventilator, and the room smelled like bleach and sadness. I looked at my hands, which were scarred from years of nervous picking, and felt the weight of being human again. Fragile, limited, and nothing like the freedom I had up there. You might know how it feels to wake up from a peaceful moment and remember that you're back in the mess of your life. But something was off. The guilt that used to make me sick every time I thought about 9/11 was gone. The nightmares of Linda's screams and the ash falling weren't bothering me anymore. Jesus' words had burned them away. It was never yours to hold. I lay there and looked at the ceiling. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a failure. The doctors kept me for a week, doing tests and shaking their heads at how quickly I was getting better. One person said, "You shouldn't be talking, let alone sitting up." I nodded, remembering Jesus' scarred hands and his promise to be with me. I stood in my Hoboken apartment, the TV off and the whiskey stain still on the carpet. I went out on my balcony, looked at the skyline of Manhattan, and waited for the old pain to come back. It didn't. I didn't feel weak. Instead, I felt a quiet strength, like a fire starting inside me. I had a job to do, not just for me, but for the people on that plane, for America, and for Emma and Sarah. I began with my family. I called Sarah first, and my hands shook as I dialed. "Sarah, it's Tom," I said when she answered. She sounded scared. "I know I've been a ghost, a bad husband, and an even worse father. I'm really sorry. I want to make it right." There was a long silence, and I could hear her breathing, which might have been her trying not to cry. "I don't know, Tom," she finally said. "You've said sorry before." I told her about my near-death experience, Jesus, and the love that changed me. I didn't push, I just said, "I'm here, Sarah. For you, for Emma, if you let me." She didn't say much, but she also didn't hang up. It was a beginning. It was harder for Emma. I drove to her halfway house in Newark, and my heart raced like I was running down the stairs of the South Tower again. She looked thin and tired, but her eyes were still those of my little girl. "What's up, Dad?" she asked, crossing her arms. I told her everything. The stroke, the vision, Jesus' love that felt like it could heal anything. My voice broke as I said, "I wasn't there for you, Emma. I let my pain hurt you, and I'll always feel bad about it. But I'm here now, and I love you more than you can ever know." She cried, I cried, and we hugged for the first time in years. It wasn't fixed yet, but it was a step toward healing, just like Jesus said it would be. You know the moment when you see someone in pain and remember that you've been there too? That's what made me start talking about the vision. I went to my old church in Hoboken, stood up during the open mic time, and told everyone what Jesus showed me: the plane, the carelessness, and the call to wake up. I said, America has forgotten what 9/11 taught us, and my voice was steady. We're cutting corners, chasing money, and ignoring God. But Jesus loves us too much to let us sleep through this. We can stop this tragedy by praying and making real changes. Some people nodded, while others looked doubtful. A few people came up after, tears in their eyes, and said they felt it too, the need to turn back to God. I began to set up prayer meetings, starting with small ones in church basements and community centers. I wasn't a preacher. I was just a guy with a story. I'd say, I saw what was coming, a plane falling because we lost our way. But Jesus said, it's not too late. He loves each and every one of us, even when we can't see it. People began to show up, including mothers, workers, and even a pilot who said he had seen corners cut at his airline. We prayed for people to change their hearts, for accountability, and for people to repent before the plane took off. I thought of Jesus' words. My children are suffering, blind to the danger. I saw them in every face at those meetings, and I felt this new compassion as if I were carrying a piece of his heart. I'm not the same Thomas who fell down in that apartment. I don't drink anymore. The Bible on my coffee table has taken the place of the whiskey bottle. I still work at the hardware store, but now I talk to customers, really listen, and ask them about their lives. I'm not perfect. Some days I worry that I'll fail again, that Emma won't stay clean, or that America won't listen. But then I think of Jesus' eyes and his voice saying, I'm with you every step of the way. He loves us and wants us to be better every day, not just when things are bad. You might have felt that pull, that feeling that something is wrong in the world and in your own heart. Jesus told me to tell you that it's not too late. We can stop this tragedy, not by being afraid, but by loving, praying, and putting God before our pride. I'm just a guy from Hoboken who survived and got a second chance. Maybe this is your chance, too, to listen, to change, and to help wake up a country before it's too late. For the people on that plane, and for the God who loves us all, let's do it together. Before we close, don't forget to subscribe and share in the comments where you're watching from. Every voice reminds us that we're not walking this journey alone. God's love binds us together, and this community prays for one another. Thank you for being family,